Yes, we're live. For some reason, didn't even plan on that working just now. I guess from the past experience from the past 2 days, it was pretty slow to start, and I was waiting for like 10 minutes. But you know what? Seems like things are working. And now the TV's not flickering. Great. We love that. Hi. Hello. Welcome back to the No Club. My name is Anna, and we're going to continue reading Men Explain Things to Me by Rebecca Solnit. Before we get into it, let me just get into the moment, decompress into the space, into my voice. Take a big deep breath if you want to take one with me. Amazeballs. Now a sip of water. I don't know about y'all, but right now it's the winter, and I have been waking up with crazy sinus issues and just it seems like it's just like difficulty breathing and like tight chest and whatever. I don't know if it's the space, if I need to do a deep cleaning, which I will definitely do this coming weekend. But yeah, I have to also say, ever since I got COVID, which it's been a minute, knock on wood, because I know, it's still here. I don't think it's going away anytime soon. I have had fucking brain fog. It's just hard to remember things, or just, and also a little bit of shortness of breath. Granted, I do have asthma, endurance asthma, but it seems to be getting worse ever since I got COVID last year. So my breathing feels like a little more labored, and that's kind of concerning. I am going back to the gym though, because I actually have to do that for my heart, my health, my mind. Lord Jesus. The gym this morning was good. I was proud of myself, even though I was having the sinus issues. I still went. I pushed through. Nobody talked to me, so that's always a good thing. I did get a couple creepy stares, but I try not to linger my eyes too long on anybody, because that's always an invitation for somebody to come up and talk to you potentially, and I'm not a fan in that space at all. I don't want you talking to me. I don't want you correcting my form. I don't want your help. I don't want your tips. Didn't fucking ask. So, yeah. I heard something on TikTok just a few minutes ago talking about, when are you going to stop letting the fear or the control of the unknown kind of take hold of your, the control of the unknown of, I can't even fucking remember exactly how she put it, but it got me thinking that I am so scared of the unknown, which causes me to want to control certain things in my life, or perhaps my whole life. And I have to continually embrace the unknown of how this podcast is going to go. I have no idea if this is going to be successful. I have no idea if this is a quote unquote waste of time. I don't think it is, because for me right now in this moment, it's helping me with my confidence. It's helping me with my presence, my engagement. It gets me outside of myself. It gets my brain firing. It's like all of these good things that I know that I need for myself. So in that way, it's not useless at all. And I also had a job interview today, and I have been applying everywhere crazy, but the one person that I know who's a recruiter set me up with this, and it's actually a really good gig. It's something that I know I would be stellar at, but I don't have a lot of experience in. And I just had one interview. Hopefully I can get the initial interview, because that's not even that, which is a video call. Corporate America, actually. So I'm not used to having corporate gigs. I was a kickboxing instructor for a hot minute, and I've done a bunch of other random things like performing in theater, stuff like that. But the unknown of that job, and the unknown of moving to New York and not having a steady income, I'm trying to not let it control me, control my thoughts. So yeah, I'm just trying to live in the moment. So let's get into this moment. Let's get into Men Explain Things to Me. I need more water already. Where were we, darling? Once I have a nice setup, I will stop having to lean forward into my mic, and it will just be here, and I can sit nice. But right now, this table that I have and the chair, if I move too far, the whole thing shakes. So I gotta like, see what I mean? Fucking goofy. It's a goofy movie over here. Oh, check out my socks. Hell yeah. Really want it to snow. I'm a fan of the snow because it's an excuse to stay inside. I don't need an excuse. Let me tell ya. So where were we? We stopped at page 52. Now page 53 is a picture. We are on chapter 4. It looks to be a woman swimming. She's doing the backstroke. Not the breaststroke. I think would have been even more, interesting. Right on the nose. But she is wearing high heels as she is doing this backstroke. I'll show it to you. I love the art in this. I love it so much. And I love the theme of water. Always just kind of like keeping your head above water is the vibe that I'm getting. Here we go. Page 55 now. In praise of the threat. Spooky, scary. I mean, it is. What marriage equality really means. 2013. For a long time, the advocates of same-sex marriage have been saying that such unions pose no threat, contradicting the conservatives who say such unions are a threat to traditional marriage. Maybe the conservatives are right, and maybe we should celebrate that threat rather than denying it. The marriage of two men or two women doesn't impact any man and woman marriage directly, but metaphysically it could. To understand how, you need to look at what traditional marriage is, and at the ways in which both sides are dissembling the advocates by denying, or more likely overlooking the threat, and the conservatives by being coy about what it's a threat to. Please elaborate. I'm very intrigued. I don't know where she's going. Recently, a lot of Americans have swapped the awkward phrase same-sex marriage for the term marriage equality. The phrase is ordinarily employed to mean that same-sex couples will have the same rights different sex couples do. But it could also mean that marriage is between equals. Now, here is the point. Right here, kids. Between equals. That's not what traditional marriage was. Throughout much of its history in the West, the laws defining marriage made the husband essentially an owner and the wife a possession, or the man a boss and the woman a servant or slave. There's so much online of a discourse about this right now. I guess, I don't know. It's just, it's running rampant. These men in these podcasts and these like dating gurus, whatever. It's just so fucking ridiculous. And they're just doing it for clout. I don't actually think these people believe this kind of stuff, but again, maybe they do. They've been so brainwashed to think that this is compassion and empathy and having humanity of seeing somebody else and seeing somebody as lesser than you is so fucking strange to me, is a foreign concept to me. I mean, we all judge and discriminate. It's part of being a human being. When you look at somebody, immediately you have like thoughts in your head about judging where they came from, what, perhaps what they're eating, what their day-to-day might look like, all these things. It's like instant judgments, and it's just subconscious, and it's just, we can't escape it, right? You can have these thoughts, but you don't have to identify with these things, and you don't have to actually believe these thoughts. You can be like, oh, that's my social conditioning. And it's really scary how dumb a lot of these fucking guys, full-grown adults are. I mean, I allow it a little more compassion. I have no compassion for them. Very little. Because I feel like you're grown. You know what I mean? And you're just choosing to not listen anymore. And you're only focusing on your social conditioning. But I have a lot more compassion to boys and young men who, I mean, it seems like just in the past couple of years alone, I'm 29. I've really been able to fully understand some of these really intense and difficult concepts of society, just how the world works and the patriarchy. And I'm sad to say that I feel like a lot of these men and women too are never going to get there. But I see a lot of good coming out of TikTok and a lot of people pushing against this. And I'm excited to be on the right side of history. You know, the British judge, William Blackstone. Why does that sound so familiar? It's like I've heard that name before. Or like Blackstone I've heard before. Was that in Wednesday? Something Blackstone? I did just watch Wednesday, but I can't remember. Wrote in 1765 in his influential commentary on English common law and later American law, quote, "By marriage, the husband and wife are one person in law. That is, the very being or legal existence of the woman is suspended during the marriage." Ew. Or at least is incorporated and consolidated into that of the husband. Yeah, marriage sounds real fun. Hetero marriage, what a blast. What a good time. Lose all of my autonomy. Of course, who doesn't want that? So fun. Under such roles, a woman's life was dependent on the disposition of her husband. And though there were kind as well as unkind husbands then, rights are more reliable than the kindness of someone who holds absolute power over you. And rights were a long way off. That is sad. The government has its little hands in every area. Government's supposed to help its citizens. When did government ever help its citizens? I don't know history enough. Hopefully one day I will have an answer to that big ass question, because I don't know. Where in the world did history ever help its citizens continually? You know, of course there's going to be fuck ups, but like noticing and then rectifying that fuck up. I don't know. I'm not sure. Under Britain's Married Women's Property Acts, the title of that makes me want to fucking die, of 1870 and 1882, everything belonged to the husband. This is 1870. All right, that's not that long ago. Paper. The wife was penniless on her own account, no matter her inheritance or her earnings. Laws against wife beating, were passed around that time in both England and the United States, but rarely enforced until, drumroll please, I have to do that very gingerly or like this will fall off. I can do a better drum roll than that, okay? I had a drum set when I was, I don't know, like 7 or something, but I didn't practice. I did practice. My parents didn't like how bad I was and that I wasn't getting better. And I was just so annoying. They had it in my room because you couldn't put it in the garage because it would fuck up the snares, apparently. But yeah. I hope that I have given you enough time to really, yearn for this information now. Enforced until the 1970s. Okay, that is 100 years later. Sounds a lot like something else. Something else pretty fucked up in the United States, if you know what I'm talking about. That domestic violence is now sometimes prosecuted, hasn't cured the epidemic of such violence in either country, England or the United States. The novelist Edna O'Brien, is she Irish? O'Brien? I was just in Ireland for the first time. That's another fun fact about me. You're learning so much about me. Who are you? Edna O'Brien's recent memoir has some blood-curdling passages about her own journey through what appears to have been a very traditional marriage. Her first husband was withering about her literary success and obligated her to sign over her checks to him. When she refused to sign over a large film rights check, he throttled her. But when she went to the police, they were not much interested. That's an interesting way of saying beat someone, throttled. The violence horrifies me, but so does the underlying assumption that the abuser has the right to control and punish his victim, and the way such violence is used to that end. You're welcome for that burp. You're fucking welcome. The Cleveland, Ohio case of Ariel Castro, accused in 2013 of imprisoning, torturing, and sexually abusing three young women for a decade. Do you remember this? I remember this. Is extreme, but it may not be quite the anomaly it is portrayed as. I would venture to believe that is true. For one thing, Castro, it is claimed, was spectacularly and openly violent to his now deceased common law wife. And what lay behind Castro's alleged actions must have been a desire for a situation in which he held absolute power, and the women were absolutely powerless. A vicious version of the traditional arrangement. This is the tradition feminism protested and protests against. Not only the extremes, but the, oh gosh, I like this word, quotidian situation. I have to look this up because I feel like I know how to say this, but I'm having a mental fart. Pause. Yeah, of or occurring every day. Quotidian. Yes, we learned that the other day. It's of or occurring every day. But it's so fancy and you rarely hear it in everyday discourse. It's quotidian. Fucking Tidian. Let's use that shit. Say it with me. 1, 2, 3. Quotidian. Tidian. You know what I mean? You know what I'm saying? I've been watching a little bit of Trailer Park Boys. I don't know if you've ever seen it, but you know what I'm saying? It's one of those just guilty pleasure shows. I used to watch it when I was younger. You know what I'm saying? Quotidian. All right. Not only the extremes, but the quotidian situation, the one that occurs every day. Feminists in the 19th century made some inroads. Those of the 1970s and 1980s made a great many more, which every woman in the United States and UK has benefited from. And feminism made same-sex marriage possible by doing so much to transform a hierarchical relationship into an egalitarian one, because a marriage between two people of the same gender is inherently egalitarian. One partner may happen to have more power in any number of ways, but for the most part, it's a relationship between people who have equal standing and so are free to define their roles themselves. Yes, quiz. Gay men and lesbians and, have already opened up the question, non-binaries, I would even say, opened up the question of what qualities and roles are male and female in ways that can be liberating for straight people. Liberating for the straights. When they marry, the meaning of marriage is likewise opened up. No hierarchical tradition underlies their union. Some people have greeted this with joy. A Presbyterian pastor who had performed a number of such marriages told me, quote, "I remember coming to this realization when I was meeting with same-sex couples before performing their ceremonies when it was legal in California." It's sweet that he's admitting to this. I like it when people can admit, it's like, oh my God, I never thought of it from somebody else's perspective or how they move through life. The old patriarchal default settings did not apply in their relationships, and it was a glorious thing to witness, which is why it's so, it's also for other reasons, it's so uncomfortable. It's like, who's the man in the relationship? Or who's the woman in the relationship? No one, bitch. We're gay. We're lesbian. I don't understand. You're doing the roles in your head. You just, American conservatives are frightened. I love scaring the conservatives with my gayness. Gets me off. By this egalitarianism. Or maybe just appalled by it. It's not traditional. Tradition. Tradition. But they don't want to talk about that tradition or their enthusiasm for it. Though if you followed their assault on reproductive rights today, some judge in Texas just came after birth control, which is not fucking surprising at all. Women's rights and the late 2012, early 2013 fervor. I need to use that word more. Fervor, like fervor is a really nice word. Fervor over renewing the Violence Against Women Act, all capitalized, Violence Against Women Act. It's not hard to see where they stand. However, they dissembled on their real interest in stopping same-sex marriage. Those of us following the court proceedings around, for example, California's marriage equality battle have heard a lot about how marriage is for the begetting and raising of children. Do it for the children, sweetheart. Get married for the kids. I know you don't like him. I know he smells like cheese everywhere, and he hasn't bathed in or washed his ass in weeks. It doesn't matter, darling. Do it for the kids. And certainly reproductive sorry about that. Not sorry. Requires the union of a sperm and an egg. But those unite in many ways nowadays, including in laboratories and surrogate mothers. I will always say laboratories. It is the only way to say it. Laboratory is so fucking boring. Don't be lame. And everyone is aware that many children are now raised by grandparents, step-parents. Don't say parents that way. That is annoying. Just say it regular. Grandparents, step-parents, adoptive parents, and other people who did not beget but love them. The hills are alive with this Von Trapp's family and all these kids. Ah. Many heterosexual marriages are childless. Yes. You know what a DINK is? Dual income, no kids. Now you know if you didn't. That's what I'm going to be a part of. Hell yeah. Many with children break up. They are no guarantee that children will be raised in a house with two parents of two genders. The courts have scoffed at the reproduction and child-raising argument against marriage equality. And the conservatives have not mounted what seems to be the real objection. And what is the real objection, you may ask? That they wish to preserve traditional marriage and, more than that, traditional gender roles. Therein lies the rub. I know lovely and amazing heterosexual couples who married in the 1940s and 1950s and every decade since. Their marriages are egalitarian, full of a mutuality. Oh, way to say mutual. Mutuality. Mutuality? Like, that is, I just want to, like, put it in. I want to see if there's another way to say it. Mutuality. Yeah. Mutuality. Mutuality. I don't know how I said it the first time, but I feel like I was very much wrong. Oh, my giggles, adorable. Aren't I just so sweet and stunning? I gotta hype myself up here. I lost the one person who was watching me, so I'm out here alone right now. Gotta hype myself up. You're doing great, baby. Keep it going. You're stunning. But where are we at? There we are. Full of mutuality. I'm literally not saying it right anymore. Mutuality. That's a tough titty right there. Full of say it again. Mutuality. If I had to say that on stage, I would be sweating. And generosity. But even people who weren't particularly nasty were deeply unequal in the past. I also know a decent man who just passed away, age 91, amazing. In his prime, he took a job on the other side of the country without informing his wife that she was moving or inviting her to participate in the decision. Now, her life was not hers to determine. It was his. It's time to slam the door shut on that era and to open another door through which we can welcome equality between genders among marital partners, for everyone in every circumstance. Marriage equality is a threat to inequality. Okay. It's like she should have started with that, but I'm happy that she didn't, because it just like the through line, it was just really nice to get to that. It's a boon to everyone who values and benefits from equality. It's for all of us. Ooh, we're on chapter 5. I need more water. Mas water. Hen hao he, which I believe in Mandarin is delicious to drink, which I love my water. Yummy. Okay, let's look at this picture here, because we have a new photograph for chapter 5. It is a woman in heels again. Like, I think she's always in heels in all of these. She is in the wind. There is a huge cloth, or maybe it's a bed sheet. She's trying to hang it up on the line, and she's getting, her silhouette is showing, so it's very seductive, but also you can't see her face. And I think that might be also in all of these pictures, you can never see the women's faces, which, in art, it's just, you're not a human being. You can't see their face. Women are depicted like this very often. And in advertisements too, it's just like from the neck down, or it's just their body parts, but they're not a whole individual. You can't see someone's face. You're just seeing that piece of them, like they're a piece of meat. Let's see here. See what I'm saying? She can't breathe, but also you can see her form. She's wearing the heels, and she's doing her womanly duty, right? That was obviously sarcasm. Like, if you're not watching right now, but y'all listening, my left hip kind of hurts. Hold on, I have to adjust. I gotta get into like cross-legged. Oh, did you hear those creaks? No, you didn't. You did not. You shut that mouth right now. Grandmother spider. Okay, this is fucked up. I remember this essay. I remember a lot of these pieces now that I'm going through, because I said it's been a minute since I read this. Hold on, ooh, yeah, nice. Now I feel like I'm more centered. But I remember, I don't really ever think about this until I read this, and now it's something that I bring up with people all the time. So I'm excited to share it with you, this information. And it's like, if you haven't thought about it, you're like, holy fucking shit, obviously. But there was something else somebody said today that I have thought about, but I was like, there's no way in hell we would ever get that. TikTok, that's where I get so much information. There's a lot of great people on that app. I mean, with everything else being suppressed, with Facebook and Instagram being, what's the right word? Troglodyte? Little troglodytes stealing our data, being evil in the couch. TikTok is not, it's not on that game yet. But somebody said Spain today, which is the first European country to get it, there is paid menstrual leave. And the woman who brought forth this information to me said, I never thought about this at all. This never even crossed my mind. It's crossed my mind every single time I have my period and I have to go to work. I have to pretend it's not happening, and when I'm doing like a physical job too. Oh my God. And my period has only gotten worse, and it actually got worse after I got vaccinated. Because the medical field just doesn't like to test anything on women for long periods of time. But granted, the vaccine was tested on no one for long periods of time, or what the short-term and long-term, even like a year after, effects would be on women specifically, because, screw us, right? But yeah, they get paid menstrual leave. And she was like, I never even thought about this before. I definitely fucking have. And I'm like, but there's no way in hell in this patriarchal society that that would ever happen. But there were two other places. She said, was it Japan? Indonesia? Don't quote me on that, but there were two other countries in the world that already had this. We are so fucking far away from that. I mean, just the fact that we still have to pay for all feminine hygiene products. Like, I just don't even like calling them that. They're just like, yes, the essentials, but then also in like the feminine hygiene aisle, there's all that shit we don't fucking need. That's just it's just a way for them to make more money, basically. Ugh, gross. You know what I'm talking about, like douching and wipes and all that stuff, sprays to make yourself smell better. I'm like, ugh. No, you don't need any of that. Don't buy that shit. It's bad for you, actually. Marketing is a lie. Grandmother Spider, 2014. Woman is hanging out the laundry. Everything and nothing happens. Oh, she's going to describe the picture. Oh, okay, great. I kind of did that already, but she has put thought and time, and she's very eloquent. I am not so eloquent. Perhaps one day I will be a little more eloquent than I am. Of her flesh, we see only several fingers and a pair of strong brown calves and feet. The white sheet hangs in front of her, but the wind blows it against her body, revealing her contours. It is the most ordinary act, this putting out clothes to dry, though she wears black high heels, as though dressed for something other than domestic work, or as if this domestic work was already a kind of dancing. It's glamorous, you know. Don't you want to stay home and just never leave? No, we fucking did that. Pandemic, terrible. Her crossed legs look as though they are executing a dance step. The sun throws her a shadow, and the dark shadow of the white sheet onto the ground. The shadow looks like a long-legged dark bird, another species stretching out from her feet. The sheet flies in the wind, her shadow flies. And she does all this in a landscape so bare and stark and without scale that it's as though you can see the curvature of the earth on the horizon. It's the most ordinary and extraordinary act, the hanging out of laundry and painting. The latter does what the wordless can do, invoking everything and saying nothing, inviting meaning in without committing to any particular one, giving you an open question rather than answers. Here in this painting by Ana Teresa Fernandez, a woman both exists and is obliterated. Pause for sinuses. Good Lord. I think a lot about the obliteration, or rather that obliteration keeps showing up. I have a friend whose family tree has been traced back 1,000 years, but no women exist on it. She just discovered that she herself did not exist. But her brothers did. Her mother did not exist, and nor did her father's mother, or her mother's father. There were no grandmothers. Fathers have sons and grandsons, and so the lineage goes, with the name passed on. The tree branches, and the longer it goes on, the more people are missing. Sisters, aunts, mothers, grandmothers, great-grandmothers, a vast population made to disappear on paper and in history. Her family is from India. But this version of lineage is familiar to those of us in the West, from the Bible, where long lists of begats link fathers to sons. It's begats. I know that word. Begats. Yeah, begats. I don't know why I was thinking it should be begets, but it's not. It's begats. begats link fathers to sons. The crazy 14 generation genealogy given in the New Testament's gospel according to Matthew. We gotta listen to Matthew, you know? I don't know much about Matthew. I have no jokes about that. It goes from Abraham to Joseph without noting that God, and not Joseph, is supposed to be the father of Jesus. The tree of Jesse, a sort of totem pole of Jesus's patrilineage, as given in Matthew, was represented in stained glass and other medieval art and is said to be the ancestor of the family tree. Thus, coherence of patriarchy, of ancestry, of narrative is made by erasure and exclusion. Eliminate your mother, then your 2 grandmothers, then your 4 great-grandmothers. Go back many generations and hundreds, then thousands disappear. Mothers vanish, and the fathers and mothers of those mothers. Even more lives disappear, as if unlived, until you have narrowed a forest down to a tree, a web down to a line. This is what it takes to construct a linear narrative of blood, or influence, or meaning. I used to see it in art, history, all the time. When we were told that Picasso begat Pollock, and Pollock begat Warhol, and so it went. As though artists were influenced only by other artists. Decades ago, the Los Angeles artist Robert Irwin famously dumped a New York art comic on the side of the freeway after the latter refused to recognize the artistry of a young car customizer making hot rods. Irwin had been a car customizer himself, and hot rod culture had influenced him deeply. I think it's fucking gross that we call cars hot rods. I've never thought about it before, but now reading it, it's gross. It just makes me think of a dick, and I don't want to be thinking about dicks. Blech. Let us continue. Where did I stop? Yes, at the nasty word. Like, I don't have a problem with moist, bitch. I like that word. Doesn't bother me at all. Hot rod, though, not a fan. I remember a contemporary artist who was more polite but as upset as Irwin when she was saddled with a catalog essay that gave her a paternalistic pedigree, claiming she was straight out of Kurt Schwitters and John Hartfield. I'm sorry. I'm not learned enough to know who those people are. Screw me. That's okay. One day we'll know. She knew she came out of hands-on work, out of weaving, and all the practical acts of making, out of cumulative gestures that had fascinated her since bricklayers came to her home when she was a child. Everyone is influenced by those things that precede formal education, that come out of the blue and out of everyday life. Those excluded influencers I call the grandmothers. There are other ways women have been made to disappear. There is the business of naming, right? In some cultures, women keep their names, but in most, their children take their father's names. And in the English-speaking world, until very recently, married women were addressed by their husbands' names, prefaced by Mrs. U. Stopped. Pause for siren. Mrs. U. Stopped, for example, being Charlotte Bronte. It's got a little umlaut over the E. So is she German? I don't know. Charlotte Bronte, and became Mrs. Arthur Nicholas. Names erased a woman's genealogy and even her existence. This corresponded to English law, as Blackstone enunciated it in 1765. I think that's a very interesting piece of information that you can quote. This whole about marriage from William Blackstone in 1765 and how the conservatives still think this way. Again, By marriage, the husband and wife are one person in law. That is, the very being or legal existence of the woman is suspended during the marriage, or at least is incorporated and consolidated into that of the husband, under whose wing, protection, and cover she performs everything, and is therefore called in our law French a femme covert, or under the protection and influence of her husband, her baron or lord. And her condition during her marriage is called her coverture. Yeah. Fuck you, Shakespeare. You should have been more progressive. Your shit was not very progressive, dude. But I understand. I get it. Queen would not have liked you to write about, forward-thinking things. And also, you surely were a misogynist. For this reason, a man cannot grant anything to his wife or enter into covenant with her. For the grant would be to suppose her separate existence. Whoa, that's a mind fuck, isn't it? Let that one sink in yet. Hear it again. Motherfuckers out here be thinking like this. I wish I had gum. You know what I mean? I feel like it's the perfect time to have a piece of gum. That is fucked. For this reason, a man cannot grant anything to his wife or enter into covenant with her, for the grant would be to suppose her separate existence. He covered her like a sheet, like a shroud, like a screen. She had no separate existence. But yeah, in society, men and women are totally fucking equal. Sure, Chad. There are so many forms of female non-existence. Early in the war in Afghanistan, the New York Times Sunday magazine ran a cover story on the country. The big image at the head of the story was supposed to show a family. But I saw only a man and children, until I realized with astonishment that what I had taken for drapery or furniture was a fully veiled woman. She had disappeared from view, and whatever all the other arguments may be about veils and burqas, they make people literally disappear. Veils go a long way back. They existed in, I always say this wrong because it's like, it makes me, Assyria. I want to say Assyria. I think it's Assyria because I gotta say ass. Assyria more than 3,000 years ago, when there were two kinds of women, respectable wives and widows who had to wear veils, and prostitutes and slave girls who were forbidden to do so. The veil was a kind of wall of privacy, the marker of a woman for one man, a portable architecture of confinement. Less portable kinds of architecture kept women confined to houses, to the domestic sphere of housework and child rearing, and so out of public life and incapable of free circulation. In so many societies, women have been confined to the house to control their erotic energies. Necessary in a patrilineage world, so that fathers could know who their sons were and construct their own lineage of begats. In matrilineage societies, that sort of control is not so essential. Wow. Really just comes down to control. They fear us. They fear us so much. Imagine being oppressed for thousands and thousands, and I don't even know for how fucking long, and I really want an answer to that question of when it all started. And then somebody just being like, oh, no, that doesn't exist. That's what all conservatives think. I'm assuming. Maybe that's too much. Maybe there's some conservatives that can recognize that there is subjugation and that there is clear and evident disparities. But still choose to not give a fuck. Seems pretty par for the course. I think I need more water. Moment of pause. right. Let's continue. In Argentina, during the, quote, dirty war from 1976 to 1983, the military, I want to say junta, but it could be junta because it's a J. I always, for some reason, feel like it's a silent J. Junta was said to disappear people. They disappeared. It's separated on the end of the page. Hold on, give me a sec. Dissidents, there we go, activists, left-wingers, Jews, both men and women. Those to be disappeared were, if at all possible, taken secretly, so that even the people who loved them might not know their fate. 15,000 to 30,000 Argentines were thus eradicated. People stopped talking to their neighbors and their friends, silenced by the fear that anyone might betray them. Their existence grew even thinner as they tried to protect themselves against non-existence. This word disappear, a verb, became a noun as so many thousands were transformed into the disappeared. Oh, she's los desaparecidos. Desaparecidos. Have no clue if I pronounced that right. But the people who loved them kept them alive. The first voices against this disappearance, the first who overcame their fear, spoke up and became visible, were those of mothers. Because of course they are. Of course they are. They were called Las Madres de la Plaza de Mayo. Their name came from the fact that they were the mothers of the disappeared, and that they began appearing in a place that represented the very heart of the country, in front of the in front of the Casa Rosa, the presidential mansion at the Plaza de Mayo in the capital, Buenos Aires. Buenos Aires. I shouldn't even pretend that I have an accent, but I feel like sometimes helps me get into it. No, I cannot speak Spanish. Buenos Aires. And having appeared, they refused to go away. Forbidden to sit, they walked. Though they would be attacked, arrested, interrogated, forced out of this most public of public places, they returned again and again to testify openly to their grief, their fury, and to mount their demand that their children and grandchildren be returned. This just is making me think of Iran right now so much. They wore white kerchiefs embroidered with the names of their children and the date of their disappearances. Motherhood was a emotional and biological tie that the generals then in charge of the country could not portray as merely left-wing or as criminal. It was a cover for a new kind of politics, as it had been for the U.S. group Women's Strike for Peace, founded in the shadow of the Cold War in 1961, when dissent was still portrayed as sinister, as communist. Motherhood and respectability became the armor, the costume, in which these women assaulted, in one case, the generals, and in the other, a nuclear weapons program and war itself. The role was a screen behind which they had a limited kind of freedom of movement in a system in which no one was truly free. When I was young, women were raped on the campus of a great university, and the authorities responded by telling all the women students not to go out alone after dark, or not to be out at all. Get in the house, for women confinement is always waiting to envelop you. Some pranksters put up a poster announcing another remedy, that all men be excluded from campus after dark. It was an equally logical solution. We heard her speak on this tale briefly in another essay. But men were shocked at being asked to disappear, to lose their freedom to move and participate, all because of the violence of one man. It is easy to name the disappearances of the dirty war as crimes, but what do we call the millennia of disappearances of women from the public sphere, from genealogy, from legal standing, from voice, from life? According to the project, again, apologies, I will be butchering a lot. For Frite e morti, wounded to death is what it is translated as, Organized by the Italian actress Serena Dandino and her colleagues, about 66,000 women are killed by men annually. 66,000 women killed by men annually worldwide. I feel like it's even more, honestly. In the specific circumstances they began to call femicide. Most of them are killed by lovers, husbands, former partners, seeking the most extreme form of containment, the ultimate form of erasure, silencing, disappearance. Such deaths are often come after years or decades of being silenced and erased in the home, in daily life, by threat and violence. Some women get erased a little at a time, some all at once. Some reappear. Every woman who appears wrestles with the forces that would have her disappear. She struggles with the forces that would tell her story for her or write her out of the story, the genealogy, the rights of man, the rule of law. Apologies. This is what happens when you read a lot. You get parched. The ability to tell your own story in words or images is already a victory, already a revolt. Yes. I think that's why I fucking love personal accounts, why I love TikTok so much. I'm so inspired by all of these women who are standing up and speaking out and sharing their stories. It's fucking inspiring, obviously. It's hello, I'm here. You can tell so many stories about a woman hanging out the laundry. Putting clothes on the line is a pleasurable task at times, a detour into the light. You can also, interesting way of saying going outside, a detour into the light. You can also tell many kinds of stories about the mysterious form all tangled up with a bedsheet in Ana Teresa Fernandez's painting, which is what we saw earlier. Hanging out the laundry might be the dreamiest of domestic chores, the one that involves air and sun and the time in which the water evaporates out of the clean clothes. It hasn't done much by the privileged anymore, though whether the woman in black high heels is a housewife or a maid or a goddess at the end of the world is impossible to determine, as is the question of what it means that she's hanging out a bedsheet, though it made me think of a string of associations involving cases of obliteration, like its own laundry line. Hanging out the laundry is generally how textiles got dye until the invention of the dryer, and I still hang it out. So do Latino and Asian immigrants in San Francisco, laundry hanging out Chinatown windows and across Mission District yards, or just farmers. I was just, in Ireland. I was hanging out my clothes. I did stay in a place in China for a year. And yeah, I hung out my shit too. And across Mission District yards, flying like so many prayer flags. Interesting. Very poetical about these. About this laundry hanging. What stories are told by the worn jeans, the kids' clothes, the size underwear, that striped pillowcase? This Saint Francis is wearing a white robe so all-enveloping we see only strong hands and one foot and a face in deep shadow from a hood. The light comes from the left and throws the heavy folds of what must be wool into deep shadows, and ridges of his arms brought together to cradle a skull form a circle whose deep folds of cloth radiate outward. His namesake, the 17th century Spanish artist Francisco de Zubarán, painted white cloth over and over in his depictions of saints, cascading like a waterfall to hide the form of Saint Jerome, swirling in light and shadow over Saint Serapion. I don't know. I don't know my saints. Listen, don't come for me. I'm not a religious person. Saint Serapion, his arms upraised in a kind of exhausted surrender, the chains around his wrists keeping him from collapse. The fabric gesticulates, absorbs, emotes. It speaks from its shrouded figures. It replaces the sensuality of flesh with a purer but no less expressive substitute. I feel like she was like an art major or something. It both hides the body and defines its space. Like the bedsheet in Fernandez's painting, it's an occasion for the pure pleasure of paint, of light and shadow, and it's a source of luminousness against the older painting's dark backgrounds. Women spun and wove most of the fabric in Zurbaran's day, but they didn't paint. Now, I saw the exhibition of Zurbaran's paintings in an old Italian town with a beautiful theater whose painted walls and ceilings reminded me of a San Francisco artist, muralist, Mona Caron. Caron? Caron. C-A-R-O-N. Caron. Though the garlands and ribbons recalled her work, few women were able to paint then, to make images in public, to define how we look at the world, to make a living, to make something we might look at 500 years later. In Fernandez's painting, the white fabric with the expressive creases and shadows is a bed sheet. It speaks of houses, of beds, of what happens in beds and then gets washed out, of cleaning house, of woman's work. This is what it's about, but not what it is. The woman who is represented is obscured, but the woman who represents is not. Interesting. Paint in several colors was squeezed out of tubes and mixed and applied to woven fabric stretched on a wooden frame so artfully we say we see a woman hanging out a bedsheet rather than oil on canvas. Ana Teresa Fernandez's image on that canvas is 6 feet tall, 5 feet wide, the figure almost lifelike. Though it is untitled, the series it's in has a title, Tellerana, which means spiderweb. The spiderweb of gender and history in which the painted woman is caught, the spiderweb of her own power that she is weaving in this painting dominated by a sheet that was woven now by a machine, but before the Industrial Revolution by women, whose spinning and weaving linked them to spiders and made spiders feminine in the old stories. Interesting, I did not know that. In this part of the world, in the creation stories of the again, I very much apologize for butchering names and tribal names here. Hopi, Pueblo, Navajo, Choctaw, and Cherokee peoples, Spider Grandmother is the principal creator of the universe. Ancient Greek stories included an unfortunate spinning woman who was famously turned into a spider, as well as the more powerful Greek fates who spun, wove, and cut each person's lifeline, who ensured that those lives would be linear narratives that end. Spider webs are images of the non-linear, of the many directions in which something might go, the many sources for it, of the grandmothers as well as the strings of begats. There's a German painting from the 19th century of women processing the flax from which linen is made. They wear wooden shoes, dark dresses, demure white caps, and stand at various distances from a wall where the hanks of raw material are being wound up as thread. From each of them, a single thread extends across the room as though they were spiders, as though it came right out of their bellies, or as though they were tethered to the wall by the fine, slim threads that are invisible in other kinds of light. They are spinning. They are caught in the web. To spin the web and not be caught in it, to create the world, to create your own life, to rule your fate, to name the grandmothers as well as the fathers, to draw nets and not just straight lines, to be a maker as well as a cleaner, to be able to sing and not be silenced, to take down the veil and appear. All these are the banners on the laundry line I hang out. Very poetical, very beautiful. I love that. I love reading in general. It's a little bit of a high for me. I don't know if it's a natural high. I think a little bit of it is just because of the breath support. Like you get a little heady. But also it's a high of, stringing these new concepts, especially when you're not prepared and you're reading out loud, and it's just like it's a surprise to you. Each new word, it's like, oh, is that what we're saying? And then sometimes you realize you fuck up the cadence, and then it's like, yeah, but it doesn't matter. Like everybody makes mistakes, and nobody's perfect. And I'm not out here trying to be perfect, and I think that's quite apparent. And I am proud that I'm less ashamed of being a human being and trying new things and not being good at them at first. I just saw Jennifer Coolidge's, I love her name too, because she is cool. She's the fucking coolest. I saw her speech at the Golden Globes. Is that what it was? I don't watch award shows. I have no interest. The only award show that I do find interesting is Tony. I like the Tonys because I like theater. But sometimes when I watch the Tonys even, I get a little sad that I didn't continue pursuing theater. I mean, there's no reason that I can't fucking go back. Okay, so don't. But right now, I am not, because it's not great for my mental health or my physical health here in the United States. Like, it's just not. It's too challenging for where I'm at in my life. But I just saw her speech, and it was so endearing and so sweet, and I was so proud of her because she was so raw and honest and seemed to be slightly unrehearsed. And I appreciate that, actually, because, yeah, it's fucking relatable, and people want to see realness, especially with our propped up celebrities that we put on that fucking pedestal. I mean, they're not just like us. That's a ridiculous claim to make. They have so much more power and money and stability and say what happens in our world. So no, they are not just like us, but they are human beings. And so relating on that, she was like messing up her words. She was talking about, the whole speech was about her insecurities of giving a speech, of speaking out loud and messing up words. And then she like had a great example, and then she's like, see, I'm not making this shit up. And it was so awesome. I'm a big fan, and I'm really happy that she's finally getting the attention that she 1000% deserves. She's such a funny actor. She cracks me up, and I can't wait to see her continue and do more gigs and keep us laughing, keep us rolling on the floor. Raffle. I'm so happy that LMFAO, Lamau, and Raffle. I don't think people actually use Raffle anymore, but that should fucking come back. But I'm happy that that's still something that's used, because I would write that out in my yearbooks in middle school. It's been a minute, so I'm happy that it's still used. All right, we are at chapter 6. Let me see how long this one is. I gotta come prepared with a full belly. Oh yeah, we'll get through this one. We're gonna read chapter 6, and then after that, I'm going to stop here for today and make some delicious dinner, hang out with my kitty cat, call my mom, and tell her about my interview, tell my dad about it too, because it's like has something a little bit to do in the legal world, which is exciting because my dad was, his grandfather was, and I believe his grandfather as well, all lawyers, and that would be pretty fucking cool. I feel like my parents love me and they certainly respect me, but I know my dad would definitely love and be very happy to hear that I had an interview for something like that, to get into that world. So let's get into it. Readjust. Oh, my whole body hurts. I'm like small and I really want to get big. Like I do not want to get tiny. And I have a great foundation of physique from years and years of training. But the past year I have lost so much because I haven't been doing shite. Haven't been doing fucking shite, yeah. Should I read the next with an Irish accent? I need a wee bit more practice. It was pretty good while I was there, honestly. But I need a bit more. I need at least like 5 or 10 minutes to get into it. But it's not that I have like body dysmorphia where I can't look at myself. Or I'm like, oh, that's so ugly. Like that thing standing in the mirror in front of me. Horrendous. But I just want to be stronger. And I want to see it in the mirror as well. And so I'm feeling some of that strength, but it is sore at first. And I'm just like, you can't rush this process. And it's really hard because everybody say it's the journey. Can we find another word? Fitness journey. Can we find another word? Like, what's a better, more interesting word than journey? Go. There's no one here in my chat. So it's just me. So I'm being delusional. What is the word? Journey, travel. That's not that interesting. That doesn't even make sense. Let's find one. Let's use the good old gooks and then we'll get into it. Let's see. Come on. Okay, here we go. Journey synonyms. Let's find a good one. We've got fitness expedition. It's not terrible. It doesn't feel right though, you know? The fitness voyage. Yeah, see this fitness trip. I mean, it is kind of a fucking trip. It's trippy. Oh, 82 synonyms. Here we go. You know, the fitness fucking adventure. Like, let's up the stakes a little bit. It's not just a journey. It's not a voyage. It's not like, it's a fucking adventure. It's brutal. Yeah. Let's get pumped. An exploration? That's not right. No. Odyssey. My fitness odyssey. Does that even make sense? Because it means, it means journey. That there's an end goal, though. It's kind of implied that there's an end goal, but there's not. Because it's a lifelong. I'm going to start saying fucking odyssey. My fitness odyssey. I'm changing everyday discourse. You're welcome. It'll catch on. So we're at chapter 6 now. Again, we have a woman in high heels. Can't see her head. You see her back. It's just all black and white. No color to any of these. No life to any of these. And they're all a bit grainy too. It all seems like something that's so far in the past, but it's not. It's right here today happening. And she's standing on what I thought was like ironing board, an ironing board, but it's not. I'm not really sure what she's standing on, but it looks like something that you would, perhaps you would cut wood on, like 2 things to lie plywood on and then saw. But here, let me show you. See what I mean? Like, I'm not 100% sure. It looks like it could be an ironing board, but it's not. Because the legs have an interesting depth to them. Like, one's kind of in the middle. They're not on the same plane. Ooh. Yay, I like this. Wolf's Darkness. Embracing the Inexplicable. 2009. This is a quote here, people. The future is dark, which is the best thing the future can be, I think. End quote. Virginia Woolf wrote in her journal on January 18th, 1915, when she was almost 33 years old, and the First World War was beginning to turn into catastrophic slaughter on an unprecedented scale. Now we use that word unprecedented way too much. It is unprecedented how many times that word is used today. that would continue for years. Belgium was occupied. The continent was at war. Many of the European nations were also invading other places around the world. The Panama Canal had just opened. The U.S. economy was in terrible shape. 29 people had just died in an Italian earthquake. Zeppelians were about to attack Great Yarmouth, launching the age of aerial bombing against civilians. And the Germans were just weeks away from using poison gas for the first time on the Western Front. Woolf, however, might have been writing about her own future rather than the world's. She was less than 6 months past a bout of madness or depression that had led to a suicide attempt and was still being tended or guarded by nurses. Until then, in fact, her madness and the war had a familiar and similar calendar. But Woolf recovered, and the war continued its downward plunge for nearly 4 more bloody years. The future is dark, which is the best thing the future can be, I think. It's an extraordinary declaration, asserting that the unknown need not be turned into the known through false divination or the projection of grim political or ideological narratives. It's a celebration of darkness, willing as that, I think, indicates to be uncertain even about its own assertion. Most people are afraid of the dark. Kind of me, I guess. I don't really know if it's afraid. I get excited in the dark. I guess I'm really kind of getting over the unknown. Literally, my guard is up in the dark, but I wouldn't say I'm afraid. Literally, when it comes to children, while many adults fear, above all, the darkness that is the unknown, the unseeable, the obscure, and yet the night in which distinctions and definitions cannot be readily made is the same night in which love is made, in which things merge, change, become enchanted. Aroused, impregnated, possessed. I don't like that word at all. Released, renewed. As I began writing this essay, and there's a reason I don't like that word so much, but I don't want to get into it right now. As I began writing this essay, I picked up a book on wilderness survival by Lawrence Gonzalez and found in it this telling sentence, quote, "The plan, a memory of the future, tries on reality to see if it fits." Interesting. His point is that when the two seem incompatible, we often hang on to the plan, ignore the warnings reality offers us, and so plunge into trouble. Ooh, bitch, I have done that so many times. When you stay in a situation and it's just the plan, and you're in a relationship with somebody that you shouldn't be, you're not working, it's not compatible, but because you have this plan, you have a plan to get married, maybe to have children, whatever, you have things set up already, a house, mortgage, this, that, and the other, you got friends and your family's involved, and you stay for way longer than you should because the plan is already set up. And yeah, I feel like everybody goes through moments like that in their life, where you ignore the warning signs because you gotta stick to the plan because it's too much unknown. You're too scared. God, it makes me think of this one amazing Marina song. She's from Marina and the Diamonds, but now is Marina with not her most recent album, but the one before it. I think it was called Love and Fear. Yeah. And there's one song about her being afraid, love and fear. Talking about, I related so much to that album. If you haven't heard those songs, please go to the YouTube or Spotify, wherever, and listen to that incredible album. You will be so inspired. Hopefully you will be in tears. It's so beautiful. Her voice is angelic, and it just stirs an emotion in you that feels spiritual, kind of like Florence and the Machine. Now, I'm not saying that they sound the same. I'm saying an experience of spirituality, of your own enlightenment, and of like coming to empathy and compassion and experiencing that revelation inside of yourself and, you know, allowing yourself to feel. I had that experience with Florence, and I have that with Marina. But yeah, I love it. Afraid of the darkness, of the unknown, the spaces in which we see only dimly. We often choose the darkness of closed eyes, of obliviousness. Gonzalez adds, quote, researchers point out that people tend to take any information as confirmation of their mental models. I mean, that makes fucking sense. We are by nature optimists. If optimism means that we believe we see the world as it is, and under the influence of a plan, it's easy to see what we want to see. That statement right there is so... Oh, my mind is blown. That makes so much sense. Oh my God, that makes so much sense. That's why we give people the benefit of the doubt and how we, you know, stay in certain relationships that we shouldn't, because we see the potential in people and we're like, oh, in the future it could be different. We're optimistic because we're sticking to the plan that's in our heads, because we believe that we understand and we see the world as it is and we see their potential, so we believe in them. If you were to care for that person. It's the job of writers and explorers to see more, to travel light when it comes to preconception, to go into the dark with their eyes open. Not all of them aspire to do so or succeed. Oh yeah. Nonfiction has crept closer to fiction in our time in ways that are not flattering to fiction, in part because too many writers cannot come to terms with the ways in which the past, like the future, is dark. Wow, that is fucking insightful as shit. Damn, this book is good. There is so much we don't know, and to write truthfully about a life, your own or your mother's or a celebrated figure's, an event, a crisis, another culture, is to engage repeatedly with those patches of darkness, those nights of history, those places of unknowing. And when you're even telling your own story, when you have traumatic events and you don't even want to share them, can't even think about them, or, you know, you tell yourself a narrative that isn't necessarily true, but you tell yourself that narrative over and over and over again that you eventually believe it, and you live in this delusional state, but you believe you see the world as it is, you become a hypocrite. It's crazy. Crazy. I think of Candace Owens as a hypocrite, you know, especially something recently she just said, that she chooses, you know, like when she's in the hiring process, she judges people and discriminates against people, which she's right about. We always have a little bit of discrimination, like subconsciously, but she chooses to act on that discrimination in the hiring process for certain things. She didn't go into like a crazy amount of detail, but I just think it's so interesting that she won, like, I don't know, $32,000 or $36,000 when she was being discriminated against in class. So I just think it's hypocritical. She's an interesting character. A terrifying one, actually. Where was I? They tell us that there are limits to knowledge. Yes, that there are essential mysteries. We cannot know it all. And anybody who is a know-it-all is a fucking buffoon, is an actual idiot. Starting with the notion that we know just what someone thought or felt in the absence of exact information. I like that too. Often enough, we don't know such things even when it comes to ourselves, let alone someone who perished in an epoch? I never use that word, and I've read it so much. Epoch. But you want to say epic, but it's epoch. mean, it sounds like a different language, which is a lot of the English language. Epoch. Yeah. It's just a period of time in a person's life. Epoch. The way she said it. I love it. Okay. Where was I? Yeah. Let alone someone who perishes in an epoch whose very textures and reflexes were unlike ours. Filling in the blanks replaces the truth that we don't entirely know with the false sense that we do. We know less when we erroneously think we know than when we recognize that we don't. Sometimes I think these pretenses at authoritative knowledge are failures of language, the language of bold assertion in simpler, less taxing than the language of nuance and ambiguity and speculation. This is how the conservatives speak. They speak in simpler, less taxing, less thought-provoking, less challenging, less intellectual, less than the language of nuance and ambiguity and speculation. I also find this in like all your news channels. You can just watch on repeat. They say the same exact line. Like when I see compilations put on comedy shows like Stephen Colbert, and it's like the same few lines again and again and again and again. Why we use unprecedented like all the time. It's just like this regurgitation. There's no deep dive into essentially into the unknown. We like to claim that, oh, we know we got to use these same sentences. This worked for that station. It's going to work for this station too. They're getting more ratings. Let's say the same exact fucking thing over here. Woolf was unparalleled at that latter language. What is the value of darkness and of venturing unknowing into the unknown? Virginia Woolf is present in 5 of my books in this century. Wanderlust, My History of Walking, A Field Guide to Getting Lost, a book about the uses of wandering and the unknown, Inside Out, which focused on house and home fantasies, The Far Away Nearby, a book about storytelling, empathy, illness, and unexpected connections, and Hope in the Dark, a small book exploring popular power and how change unfolds. Woolf has been a touchstone author for me, one of my pantheon, along with I want to say George, but I feel like it's Georg, Louise Borges, Isaac Dinesen, George Orwell, Henry David Thoreau, and a few others. Even her name has a little wildness to it. The French call dusk the time, entre le chien et le loup, between the dog and the wolf. Definitely didn't say that right. And certainly in marrying a Jew in the England of her era, Virginia Stephen was choosing to go a little feral, to step a little beyond the properties of her class and time. While there are many Woolfs, mine has been a Virgil, guiding me through the uses of wandering, getting lost, anonymity, immersion, uncertainty, and the unknown. I made that sentence of hers about darkness the epigram that drove Hope in the Dark, my 2004 book about politics and possibility, written to counter despair in the aftermath of the Bush administration's invasion of Iraq. Just a lot of information on how she's using it. Okay, I need a little snack or something. I'm kind of a raccoon. Nom, 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 nom. I got this cake the other day. Well, it's more like it's a pound cake. It's not an actual cake. I gotta show it to you. I haven't tried it yet. My girlfriend said it's really good though, so obviously I got it for us because I'm a sweet little bean. Let me find it. Let me just leap over this couch right now like a linebacker. Check it out. I don't normally eat the super processed stuff anymore. I used to. I mean, I still do sometimes. Like, really, like, don't get me wrong. But My girlfriend said, like, her family loves these. They said they're really good. She's into it. I love chocolate. I can't deny it. I'm just going to eat, like, a little bit. Oh, it's sugary. Like, it's powdered sugar. It's going to get literally everywhere. Oh, this is a fucking mess. Wait. I did not. I actually don't like that. The icing on the top is cupcake icing. It's like really like sugary, a little grainy. I might just eat the pound cake and not the icing on top. I'm gonna just cut me a slice. I can have some of the bread. Yay! Oh man, that's disappointing. I really wanted to like the top. Whoa. That is crazy right there. I just had like a little bite. Whoa. That's crazy. I did eat the icing as well. But I gotta say, it did help with the bread and the icing together. It was okay. Pretty good. It's not my favorite. And I kind of feel just from that bite a little like head rush, like a sugar rush. I need some water. Whew. All right. That should keep me going. A little bit of the kids' crack. Looking away, looking again. I began my book with that sentence about darkness. The cultural critic and essayist Susan Sontag, whose wolf is not quite my wolf. Okay, now I understand. Whose wolf is not quite my wolf, her inspiration. Opened her 2003 book on empathy and photography regarding the pain of others with a quote from a later wolf. I see. So a different era of wolf. I understand what she's saying now. She began this way, quote, in June 1938, Virginia Woolf published 3 guineas. Yeah, 3 guineas. Her brave, unwelcomed reflections on the roots of war, end quote. Sontag went on to examine Woolf's refusal of the we in the question that launches the book. How, in your opinion, are we to prevent war? I don't know. Which she answered instead with the statement, as a woman, I have no country. Interesting. Sontag then argues that Woolf about that we, about photography, about the possibility of preventing war. She argues with respect, with an awareness that historical circumstances had changed radically, including the status of women as outsiders, with the utopianism of Woolf's era that imagined an end to a war altogether. She doesn't only argue with Woolf, she argues with herself, rejecting her earlier argument in her landmark book on photography, that we grow deadened to images of atrocity and speculating on how we must continue to look. Because the atrocities don't end, and somehow we must engage with them. Sontag ends her book with thoughts about those in the midst of the kind of war that raged in Iraq and Afghanistan, as she wrote of people in war, quote, this we is everyone who has never experienced anything like what they went through, don't understand. We don't get it. We truly can't imagine what it was like. We can't imagine how dreadful, how terrifying war is, and how normal it becomes. Can't understand, can't imagine. End quote. Sontag, too, calls on us to embrace the darkness, the unknown, the unknowability, not to let the torrent of images that pour down on us convince us that we understand or make us numb to suffering. Again, all I'm thinking about is Iran and how the West is not fucking talking about it enough or at all. She argues that knowledge can numb as well as awaken feeling, but she doesn't imagine the contradictions can be ironed out. She grants us permission to keep looking at the photographs. She grants their subjects the right to have the unknowability of their experience acknowledged. And she herself acknowledges that even if we can't completely comprehend, we might care. Sontag doesn't address our inability to respond to entirely unseen suffering. For even in this era of daily email solicitations about loss and atrocity and amateur as well as professional documentation of wars and crises, much remains invisible, which is another reason why I fucking love TikTok so much, because that unknowingness, that invisibility, some of that is going away with firsthand accounts of what's happening in the world. And regimes go to great lengths to hide the bodies, the prisoners, the crimes, and the corruption. Still, even now, someone may care. Like Iran, that fucking evil regime covered up, or in the public, I'm not sure if it was online or how they were like putting it out or whether it was in the news. I'm not 100% sure, but was putting out that the fucking righteous murder of the judge of death, this very evil judge who has sentenced so many people to death, who is a reason for a man's public hanging a few weeks ago in Iran, was murdered in front of his home, rightfully so. But yeah, they were saying they were lying and trying to cover it up and saying that he died in the hospital. He had like some complications and it was a health thing. No, the revolutionaries took matters into their own hands, which is what they're continuing to do. The revolution that's happening in Iran is fucking inspiring. Let us continue. Where did I leave off? Here it is. The Sontag, who began her public career with an essay she entitled Against Interpretation, was herself a celebrant of the indeterminate. In opening that essay, she wrote, quote, "The earliest experience of art must have been that it was incantatory, magical. Ooh, like incantation, incantatory. Later in the essay, she adds, today is such a time when the project of interpretation is largely reactive, stifling. That's interesting, too. It is the revenge of the intellect upon the world. To interpret is to impoverish," end quote. And of course, she then went on to a life of interpretation that, in its great moments, joined Woolf in resisting the pigeonholes, the oversimplifications, and easy conclusions. None of what's going on in the world or understanding the world is easy or simple. I argued with Sontag and she argues with Woolf. In fact, the first time I met her, I argued with her about darkness and, to my astonishment, did not lose. If you go to her last posthumous essay, posthumous? Hold on. Posthumous. But it's like a silent H, or it's like a CA, but there is no C in there. Posthumous. Yeah, posthumous. But that is not how you want to read it at all. Yeah. It means, an award-winning, a famous posthumous essay collection. At the same time, the title is, at the same time, Essays and Speeches. You will find a small paragraph of my ideas and examples interpolated. I don't think I'm ever going to use that word again. In her essay, like a burr in her sock. Ooh, I like that. Very uncomfortable. Sontag was writing her keynote speech for the Oscar Ramiro Award in the spring of 2003, just as the Iraq War broke out. The award went to Ishai, I'm sorry, I'm going to butcher this name, I apologize, Ishai Menuhin. I apologize. Chairman of the Committee of Selective Refusal of Military Services in Israel. Sontag had been about 9 when Wolf died. I visited her when she was 70 in her top floor apartment in New York's Chelsea neighborhood, very fancy, with a view of the backside of the gargoyle out the window and a pile of printed out fragments of the speech on the table. I read them while drinking a dank dandelion root tea I suspect she'd had in her cupboard for decades, the only alternative to espresso in that kitchen. She was making the case that we should resist on principle, even though it might be futile. I had just begun trying to make the case for hope in writing, and I argued that you don't know if your actions are futile, that you don't have the memory of the future, that the future is indeed dark, which is the best thing it could be, and that, in the end, we always act in the dark. The effects of your actions may unfold in a way that cannot foresee or even imagine. They may unfold long after your death. That is when the words of so many writers often resonate most. Here we are, after all, revisiting the words of a woman who died 3/4 of a century ago and yet is still alive in some sense in so many imaginations. Part of the conversation and influence with agency. In Sontag's resistance speech published at Dispatch that spring 2003 and in At the Same Time, that title, a few years later, you can see a paragraph in which Sontag refers to Thoreau's posthumous influence and to the Nevada test site, the place where more than 1,000 nuclear bombs were detonated, and where for several years, starting in 1988, I joined the great civil disobedience actions against the nuclear arms race. The same example ended up in Hope in the Dark, her book, Rebecca's book, Hope in the Dark. It was about how we anti-nuclear activists did not exactly shut down the Nevada test site, our most overt goal, but inspired the people of Kazakhstan to shut down the Soviet test site in 1990. Totally unforeseen, totally unforeseeable. I learned so much from the test site and the other places I wrote about in my book, Savage Dreams, The Landscape Wars of the American West, about the long arc of history, about unintended consequences, delayed impacts. The test site as a place of great convergence and collision, and the example of authors like Sontag and Wolf taught me to write. And then years later, Sontag leavened her argument about acting on principle with my examples from that kitchen conversation and some details I wrote down. It was a small impact I could have never imagined, and it took place in a year when we both were invoking Virginia Woolf. The principles we both subscribed to in the books were cited her could be called Woolfian. Cool. The principles we both subscribed to in the books that cited her could be called Woolfian. I like that. Yeah, you really have no idea. When you make a choice, you have no idea where that choice is going to take you, especially when that's why it is important to branch out and meet new people, and try. It's important to try, even if you fail, especially if you fail. You can try that same thing again, maybe in a new tactic, or just totally fucking scrap it and do something else. And embrace the fear, embrace the afraid, not let it hold you back, and not being afraid to change paths when things aren't right for you. I subscribe to that. 2 winter walks. To me, the grounds for hope are simply that we don't know what will happen next. Boom, bitch! Sorry, I got excited about that. And that the unlikely and the unimaginable transpire quite regularly. And that the unofficial history of the world shows that dedicated individuals and popular movements can shape history and have, though how and when we might win and how long it takes is not predictable. Despair is a form of certainty. And I got to tell you what, certainty, it feels good. It feels good, which is why despair feels so good. Certainty that the future will be a lot like the present or will decline from it. Despair is a confident memory of the future. In Gonzalez's resonant phrase, optimism is similarly confident about what will happen. Both are grounds for not acting. Hope can be the knowledge that we don't have that memory and that reality doesn't necessarily match our plans. Hope, like creative ability, can come from what the romantic poet John Keats called negative capability. On a midwinter's night in 1817, a little over a century before Woolf's journal entry on darkness, the poet John Keats walked home talking with some friends, and as he wrote in a celebrated letter describing that walk, quote, several things dovetailed in my mind, and at once it struck me that what quality went to form a man of achievement, especially in literature? I mean, negative capability, that is, when a man is capable of being in uncertainties, mysteries, doubts, without any irritable reaching after fact and reason. I am in the unknowing, but I do crave to know right now. I'm not craving to know the future. I'm craving to understand the past and understand why I feel the way that I feel right now, what the fuck is going on, why there's just so much vitriol everywhere I turn, and why the world is absolutely riddled with hatred, and so much of that is towards women. So, Keats walking and talking and having. Keats walking and talking and having. Several things dovetail in his mind, suggests the way wandering on foot can lead to the wandering of imagination and to an understanding that is creation itself. I love that. That's why it is important to go for walks, to let your mind wander. The activity that makes introspection an outdoor pursuit. In her memoir, A Sketch of the Past, Woolf wrote, quote, then one day, walking around Tavistock Square, I made up, as I sometimes make up my books, to the lighthouse. In a great, apparently involuntary, rush, one thing burst into another, blowing bubbles out of a pipe, gives the feeling of the rapid crowd of ideas and scenes which blew out of my mind, so that my lips seemed syllabling, like syllabling. That's like a hard word to say actually, but it's like super fun. Syllab. I can't even say it now. Syllabling of their own accord as I walked. What blew the bubbles? Why then? I have no notion. End quote. Some portion of Woolf's genius, it seems to me, is that having no notion, that negative capability. I once heard about a botanist in Hawaii with a knack for finding new species by getting lost in the jungle, by going beyond it, probably talking about Tarzan, by going beyond what he knew and how he knew, by letting experience be larger than his knowledge, by choosing reality rather than the plan. Woolf not only utilized but celebrated the unpredictable meander. I'm going to look that word up. Yeah, it's meander. And I know that. And I know that. I say that. I use that word. To meander, to the unfollow course, just kind of like go wherever you're going to go. You just meander about. You mill and seethe. But on the page, It read to me meander because it is mean and then DER, but it's meander. English is fun. Anyway, sorry about that. Woolf not only utilized but celebrated the unpredictable meander on mind and foot. Her great essay, quote, Street Haunting, a London Adventure from 1930, has the light breezy tone. Oh, sorry, that was just the title. Street Haunting, a London Adventure, end quote, from 1930, has the light breezy tone of many of her early essays, and yet voyages deep into the dark. It takes a fictionalized or invented excursion to buy a pencil in the winter dusk of London as an excuse to explore darkness, wandering, invention, the annihilation of identity, the enormous adventure that transpires in the mind while the body travels a quotidian course. I feel like she's trying to get us to use that word because that's the third time I believe she's used that word, quotidian, occurring every day. Quote, the evening hour, too, gives us the irresponsibility which darkness and lamplight bestow, she writes. We are no longer quite ourselves as we step out of the house on a fine evening between 4 and 6. We shed the self our friends know us by and become part of the vast Republican army of anonymous trampers. It's interesting she used that word. Whose society is so agreeable after the solitude of one's own room. Here she describes a form of society that doesn't enforce identity but liberates it. The society of strangers, the republic of the streets, the experience of being anonymous and free that big cities invented. Introspection is often portrayed as an indoor solitary thing. The monk is in his cell, the writer at her desk. Woolf disagrees, saying at the home, quote, for there we sit surrounded by objects which enforce the memories of our own experience. She describes the objects and then states, but when the door shuts on us, all that vanishes. The shell-like covering which our souls have excreted to house themselves, to make for themselves a shape distinct from others, is broken, and there is left of all these wrinkles and roughness of central pearl of perceptiveness and enormous eye. How beautiful a street is in winter. The essay found its way into my history of walking, Wanderlust. That is also a history of wandering and of the mind in motion. The shell of home is a prison of sorts, as much as a protection, a casing of familiarity and continuity that can vanish outside. Walking the streets can be a form of social engagement, even of political action when we walk in concert, as we do in uprisings, demonstrations, and revolutions, but it can also be a means of inducing reverie, subjectivity, and imagination, a sort of duet between the prompts and interrupts of the outer world and the flow of images and desires and fears within. At times, thinking is an outdoor activity and a physical one. In these circumstances, it is often mild distraction that moves the imagination forward, not uninterrupted concentration. Thinking then works by indirection, sauntering in the roundabout way to places it cannot reach directly. In street haunting, the voyages of imagination may be purely recreational, but such meandering allowed Woolf to conceive the form of To the Light, had furthered her creative work in a way that sitting at a desk might not. The ways creative work gets done are always unpredictable, demanding room to roam, refusing schedules and systems. They cannot be reduced to replicable formulas. That makes sense. Makes a lot. Oh, that makes so much sense, which is why it's so hard sometimes to just like sit down and write something when you know you have to get it done, and it's a creative piece or create anything, and you just want to be inspired, but like how does that inspiration spark? But just knowing that, giving yourself, at least allowing that day, and hopefully not like grasping onto, oh, I must find something, but just allowing your mind to roam and to wander, and maybe just absolutely going outside and getting in touch with nature. I've definitely written and had my most profound thoughts. When I am connected with nature, I'm connected to my breath, and I feel that oneness. I feel at home. I feel at peace within myself. And yeah, do I get that a lot in the city? Hell fucking no. No, the city, New York for me, I don't think me and New York mix. I think I need a lot of, I think I need a lot more nature, to be honest. But that's okay. The unknown. Maybe it will be good for me in the future. Public space, urban space, which serves at other times the purposes of the citizen, the member of society establishing contact with other members, is here the space in which to disappear from the bonds and binds of individual identity. Wolf is celebrating getting lost. Not literally lost as in not knowing how to find your way, but lost as in open to the unknown and the way that physical space can provide psychic space. I feel like I know this so much in theater. I actually could talk about this for hours in regards to knowing something so well that you can throw away all of the work and just go into the unknown and just like ride it out and be excited for it because like yes, you know the way, you've learned the lines, you've practiced, you've rehearsed, but on that day it's like you can't just go through the motions sticking exactly to the script, but there's the nuances of then letting that go and being present and actually listening and communicating. And when when you see it on screen or you see it live, you feel it, you know it, you know when somebody's putting it on, and you know when something is an authentic real moment of unknowing, unexpected, and really listening. It's cool. It's wonderful. I love it. I miss it. Fuck, I miss acting. She writes about daydreaming or perhaps eve evening dreaming. I don't know why. My brain was just like even dreaming. Now I'm like getting into this headspace where I'm feeling a little bit more poetical, but I need to read the words that are in front of me. Evening dreaming in this case, the business of imagining yourself in another place as another person. Oh, I would do this so much. I still do it listening to music. I just imagine all of these like fantastical things. Or like when I'm in the gym, yes, I'm focused, but I also have like the hype music and I'm thinking of myself like on this some sort of pedestal. I'm doing some amazing Olympic style feat. I'm such a fucking badass. And then sometimes I really enjoy my dreams, so I just like make them come true. Just like, ooh, yeah, I really want to go do that thing. So I just, I go do that thing. Because in my head, it seems fucking awesome. And it always turns out to be amazing, at least for the story. In Street Haunting, she wonders about identity itself. Or is the true self, and this is in the Street Haunting, this is the excerpt. Or is the true self neither this nor that, neither here nor there, but something so varied and wandering that it is only when we give the rein to its wishes and let it take its way unimpeded that we are indeed ourselves. Circumstances compel unity. For convenience sake, a man must be a whole. The good citizen, when he opens his door in the evening, must be banker, golfer, husband, father, not a nomad wandering the desert, a mystic staring at the sky, debauchee, it seems like debacle, like debauchery, I have to hold on. Give me a second. I have to look it up. Like debauchery.
Debauchee.
Yeah, like debauchery, but a debauchee. So somebody who is into debauchery. A debauchee in the slums of San Francisco, a soldier heading a revolution, a pariah howling with skepticism and solitude. End excerpt. But he is all these things, she says, and the strictures limiting what he can be are not her strictures. Principles of uncertainty. Woolf is calling for a more introspective version of the poet Walt Whitman's I Contain Multitudes, which is fabulous. My mom was an English teacher, loves poetry. Yeah. So I contain multitudes. It's a great one. A more diaphanous diaphanous version of the poet Arthur Rimbaud's I is another. She is calling for circumstances that do not compel the unity of identity that is a limitation or even repression. It's often noted that she does this for her characters in her novels, less often that in her essays. She exemplifies it in the investigative, critical voice that celebrates and expands and demands it in her insistence on multiplicity, on irreducibility, and maybe on mystery. If mystery is the capacity of something to keep becoming, to go beyond, to be uncircumscribable, to continue more. Woolf's essays are often both manifestos about and examples or investigations of this unconfined consciousness, this uncertainty principle. They're also models of a counter criticism, for we often think the purpose of criticism is to nail things down. During my years as an art critic, there it is. Yes, I knew she was an art critic. I used to joke that museums love artists the way that taxidermists love deer. And so that makes so much sense. And something of that desire to secure, to stabilize, to render certain and define the open-ended, nebulous, and adventurous work of artists is present in many who work in that confinement, sometimes called the art world. Yeah, I feel that when you're learning pieces of literature, you're in school growing up, you're in elementary school, secondary school, high school, pause for siren, university, any schooling. And you're reading something, maybe you're in art class, anything but mathematics. And I mean, even science sometimes, but like math and science, they go hand in hand. But we're talking about that like unknowing when the teacher tries to define, oh, this is exactly what the author meant, this and that, and you can have no other interpretations, and that's what you got to put on the test. Like, I fucking hate that. Thank God my mom doesn't agree with that. She would not teach her classes that way either, especially not when it comes to poetry. Like, get the fuck out of here. A similar kind of aggression against the slipperiness of the work, I like that, and the ambiguities of the artist's intent and meaning often exists in literary criticism and academic scholarship. Okay, that's exactly what I was saying. A desire to make certain what is uncertain, to know what is unknowable, to turn the flight against the sky into the roast upon the plate, to classify and contain. What escapes categorization can escape detection altogether. There is a kind of counter-criticism that seeks to expand the work of art by connecting it, opening up its meanings, inviting in the possibilities. A great work of criticism can liberate a work of art, to be seen fully, to remain live, to engage in a conversation that will not end, but will instead keep feeding the imagination. Not against interpretation, but against confinement, against the killing of the spirit. Such criticism is itself great art, because it's made up, it's make-believe, it's not true. Something that is like, oh no, women are this way. That statement right there is a piece of art that you have just said, a very harmful piece of art, when people claim, oh no, this is your genitalia that you were born with, therefore this makes you a woman and that makes you a man. Those statements are extremely fucking harmful. But from her account, she's saying such criticism, like, it's what you just said is made up. It's nebulous. It's from your interpretation, because gender is a social construct. So that is just art, but you don't see it that way. You see it as a confinement of exactness, of a definitive, it is a true fact, and it is not. This is a kind of criticism that does not pit the critic against the text, does not seek authority. Okay? It seeks instead to travel with the work and its ideas, to invite it to blossom and invite others into a conversation that might have previously seemed impenetrable, to draw out relationships that might have been unseen and open doors that might have been locked. This is a kind of criticism that respects the essential mystery of a work of art, which is in part its beauty and its pleasure, both of which are irreducible and subjective. The worst criticism seeks to have the last word and leave the rest of us in silence. The best opens up an exchange that need never end. Liberations. Woolf liberates the text, the imagination, the fictional character, and then demands that liberty for ourselves, most particularly for women. This gets to the crux of the Woolf that has been most exemplary for me. She is always celebrating a liberation that is not official, institutional, rational, but a matter of going beyond the familiar, the safe, the known into the broader world. She demands the liberation for women were not merely so that they could do some of the institutional things men do, and women now do too, but to have full freedom to roam geographically and imaginatively. She recognizes that this requires various practical forms of freedom and power, recognizes it in a title, a room of one's own, too often remembered as an argument for rooms and incomes, though it demands also universities and a whole world via the wonderful, miserable tale of Judith Shakespeare, the playwright's doomed sister. Quote, she could get no training in her craft. Could she even get her dinner in a tavern or roam the streets at midnight? End quote. Dinner in taverns, streets at midnight, the freedom of the city are crucial elements of freedom, not to define an identity, but to lose it. I mean, I feel like women should work less hours in general because, one, yes, menstrual leave, but also because we actually have a shorter day. We don't get 24 hours because it's not safe for us to walk out at night, so we are confined to our homes in the evening. So I think that we should just be allowed to not work as much and get paid more. That makes sense. Perhaps the protagonist of her novel, Orlando, who lives for centuries, slipping from one gender to another, embodies her ideal of absolute freedom to roam in consciousness, identity, romance, and place. The question of liberation appears another way in her talk, Professions for Women, which describes with delightful ferocity the business of killing the angel in the house, the ideal woman who meets all others' needs and expectations, and not her own. Here's the excerpt. I did my best to kill her. My excuse, if I were to be had up in a court of law, would be that I acted in self-defense. Killing the angel in the house was part of the occupation of a woman writer. The angel was dead. What then remained? You may say that what remained was a simple and common object, a young woman in a bedroom with an ink pot. In other words, now that she had rid herself of falsehood, that young woman had only to be herself. But what is herself? I mean, what is a woman? I assure you, I do not know. I do not believe that you know. End quote. By now you've noticed that Woolf says, I don't know, quite a lot. Whoa, and I just almost tipped forward and ate shit. But now you've noticed that Woolf says, I don't know quite a lot. Yes, we do. Killing the angel of the house, she says further on, I think I solved. She died. But the second, telling the truth about my own experiences as a body, I do not think I solved. I doubt that any woman has solved it yet. The obstacles against her are so immensely powerful, and yet they are very difficult to define. This is Woolf's wonderful tone of gracious non-compliance. To say that her truth must be bodily is itself radical, to the point of being almost unimaginable before she had said it. Embodiment appears in her work much more decorously than in, say, Joyce's, but it appears as though she looks at ways that power may be gained. It is Woolfian, that in her essay on being third, I believe, she finds that even the powerlessness of illness can be liberatory. Ooh. For noticing what healthy people do not. For reading texts with a fresh eye. For being transformed. All Woolf's work, as I know it constitutes a sort of Ovidian metamorphosis, where the freedom sought is the freedom to continue becoming, exploring, wandering, going beyond. She is an escape artist. Yes, I am like yearning to go beyond my present knowledge and my own capabilities right now. So like, I fucking get this shit. Love it. Oh, it's so beautiful. In calling for some specific social changes, Woolf is herself a revolutionary. And of course, she had the flaws and blind spots of her class and place and time, which she saw beyond in some ways, but not in all. We also have those blind spots later generations may or may not condemn us for, but her ideal is of a liberation that must also be internal, emotional, intellectual. My own task these past 20 years or so of living by words has been to try to find or make a language to describe the subtleties, the incalculables, the pleasures and meanings impossible to categorize at the heart of things. My friend Chip Ward speaks of the tyranny of the quantifiable, of the way what can be measured almost always takes precedence over what cannot. Private profit over public good. Speed and efficiency over enjoyment and quality. The utilitarian over the mysteries and meanings that are of greater use to our survival and to more than our survival, to lives that have some purpose and value, that survive beyond us to make a civilization worth having. The tyranny of the quantifiable is partly the failure of language and discourse to describe more complex, subtle, and fluid phenomena, as well as the failure of those who shape opinions and make decisions to understand and value these slipperier things. Oh my God, it just makes me think of the people in power, you know, and how young minds are being molded, and how all of our minds have been molded to just regurgitate the same pieces of information over and over again without, seeking out, doing more research on our own. We also don't really have the fucking time for it. That's a part of it too. Keeping us down, keeping our minds down, keeping our intelligence low. It is difficult, sometimes even impossible, to value what cannot be named or described. Yes, it is. And so the task of naming and describing is an essential one in any revolt against the status quo of capitalism and consumerism. Bitch. That's what I'm talking about. Right here, right fucking now, using these words. Let's fucking go. Ultimately, the destruction of the earth is due in part, perhaps in large part, to a failure of the imagination, or to its eclipse by systems of accounting that can't count what matters. The revolt against this destruction is a revolt of the imagination in favor of subtleties, of pleasures money can't buy and corporations can't command, of being producers rather than consumers of meaning, of the slow, the meandering, the digressive, the exploratory, the numinous, that's a nice word, the uncertain. I want to end with a passage from Woolf that my friend, the painter, May Stevens, sent me after writing it across the text of one of her paintings, a passage that found its way into a field guide to getting lost. In May's paintings, Woolf's long sentences are written so that they flow like water. Become an elemental force on which we are all swept away and buoyed up. In To the Lighthouse, Woolf wrote, "For now, she need not think about anybody. She could be herself by herself. And that was what now she often felt the need of, to think. Well, not even to think, to be silent, to be alone. All the being and doing expansive, glittering, vocal, evaporated, and one shrunk with a sense of solemnness, but its solemnity, to being oneself, a wedge-shaped core of darkness, something invisible to others. That sounds beautiful. Although she continued to knit and sat upright, it was thus that she felt herself, and this self, having shed its attachments, was free from the strangest adventures. Oh, was free for the strangest adventures. There it is. When life sank down for a moment, the range of experience seemed limitless. Beneath it is all dark. It is all spreading. It is unfathomable deep, unfathomably deep. But now and again we rise to the surface, and that is what you see us by. Her horizon seemed to her limitless. Wolf gave us limitlessness, impossible to grasp, urgent to embrace, as fluid as water, as endless as desire, a compass by which to get lost. I like that a lot. Oh, I like that so much. Everybody just wants to control and to make meaning of things and to understand. You know, just we're all just defined. I always hated, like, at dinner parties or whatever. What do you do? So, and I play the part too. I ask people the same. I'm like, so how do you make your living? Who are you? You got to define yourself by your occupation. Because that's just the system that it is. But we're so much more than that. And I've been so goddamn privileged to experience that imagination for so much of my life because of theater. And to really feel that moment of embracing the unknown and being okay with it and learning to love seeking out knowledge and expressing myself. Yeah. Finding my artistry, finding my own creativity. It's been wonderful. And I miss it so much. And I feel a deadening, a hardening inside myself without that meandering about, without that, that lost sense, where I don't know where I'm going. It's not I can't find my way. I can still figure it out. That I trust myself to figure it out. I had a teacher, a vocal coach in school, in college, that said, you always be a gypsy, won't you? And I know that that's not the best terminology. He is very old. It's an offensive word. I understand. But what he just meant was a wanderer, someone not an actual gypsy. That's offensive. But somebody who is searching, always searching. And he's like, I know, I see it in you because I'm the same way. And he's definitely was, right? Joshua Hecht, he has passed. He was an old man, an old gentleman. Oh my God, I miss that man so much. He really brought out so much hope. And once hope is lost, then the future is lost. So let's keep finding our hope in whatever way you can each day, as much as you can. Something to be hopeful for. Something. I am hopeful that I'm going to have a very peaceful and pleasant evening tonight, and that's all I'm thinking about right now. It's just like enjoying the rest of my night at ease, hanging out with my kitty cat, and I am hopeful that I get this job and that I try something new, unafraid, and kick fucking ass, learn a lot, work my way up that corporate ladder. No, I don't want to do that, but I do need the money and I think I'd be damn good at it. So, it is what it is. You do what you can, because I'm telling you, I can't do any more dog walking. Okay. I can't do it. I can't work behind the cashier anymore. I can't do it, babe. No more. None of that shit. Nope. Can't do any more deliveries or drive ups. No. No. I can't do any more like cold calling. Shit. Nope. Not for me. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed Men Explain Things to Me by Rebecca Solnit. We are not done. We got to page 100, so we will continue this tomorrow. Right now, for the rest of the week, I think it's probably going to be around 5 p.m. So if you were here, and I mean, I can see that there's no one here, but 5 p.m. tomorrow. My brain is like mush now. I just have all these thoughts. Maybe I should go write. Actually, yeah, that's a good idea. That's what I'm going to do. My words matter. My voice matters. Let me go write. I love you. Thank you so much for watching. You're brilliant. Keep seeking out the darkness and the unknown. And please don't be terrified into submission of failing epically. Okay? It's not the end of the world. And I'll see you tomorrow. Thanks for tuning in to the No Club. These knees are a no.